What's up, YouTube? It's T Money. We are back with another Minnesota or Iowa Wild video. We're bringing Jake back for this one, and this one is an official announcement. During our Wild organization season review, we made that we put it close to the end, or it was sometime throughout the video, that Tim Army was officially released as head coach along with the entire coaching staff. We now know the name of the replacement. This is Brett McLean as the 5th head coach in Iowa Wild history. I'm going to keep that in one spot because it rolling across the bottom like that does not look good in my opinion. But yes, Brett McLean is the Iowa Wild's 5th head coach in franchise history.
Trev?
What?
I want to reread.
Yep, just seen that. Fixing that now. But I will say, from initial thought, I'm really happy about this hire because I was able to get a little bit of the article from The Athletic. And Jake, I don't know if you knew this, Brett McLean used to be Tim Army's assistant. So Brett's going back to an area going back to a place he knows, but instead of being the assistant, he is going to be the head coach. McLean is entering his from the article, from The Athletic, produced by Michael Russo himself. McLean is entering his 7th season with the organization. He is one of Army's assistants in Iowa for 3 seasons before being elevated to an assistant coach in Minnesota in the 2020-2021 season. He spent the past 3 years with the NHL squad, predominantly running the power play. During his Iowa tenure, Iowa went 107, 71, and 37. During his Minnesota tenure, he went 134, 63, and 23. So we're talking a coach that knows how to run this shit.
Yeah, and what's nice about that too is, again, he has experience in both Iowa and Minnesota, so he knows a little bit about both sides of the aisle, which, again, as a fan of, the farm system and stuff like that, especially with all the young players and stuff like that, Brett McLean will actually kind of know. I mean, hell, he's seen a few of these guys at the NHL level. I mean, granted, maybe for like 2 or 3 games, but still, he kind of has an idea of Giroux. He has an idea of Rossi. He has an idea of even Shaw and those guys, like some guys he's helped see come from Iowa and contribute at a pretty high level for us. So if he can go down there and actually help out with just developing the youth, because that was the big issue and why Curvers or Army got cut, because they just weren't developing him the way they needed to. And yeah, like I say, I mean, solid move there. You're within the organization, so you understand both sides of the aisle. You understand that what it takes to play at the NHL level, what it takes to coach at the NHL level, even if it is just like a power play or an assistant coach, you understand the nuances. So, again, huge move, in my opinion, to keep it within house in this instance because, again, Brett McLean has been at both levels. He understands what it takes to adjust, basically.
And I will say, I did finally get the Army's official record with this tenure of the Iowa Wild. 157, 115, and 45. Most of the 3 of those seasons being with Russo as the tenured coach, a tenured assistant coach. So you're missing, if I'm looking at this correctly, 50 wins, about 20 or so odd losses, and then only a small handful of overtime losses. So I think Iowa's getting a pretty good head coach out of all this.
Yeah. And like I say, he knows the system. He's seen a lot of these guys come up, back and forth between Minnesota and Iowa. he's seen what it takes to develop guys, and he kind of understands what Guerin wants, what Evason wants, what Murray wants down in Iowa, and those guys. It's just like he understands a little bit more about what it takes to develop and play at a high level at the NHL.
Yeah. Oh, Murray, I think I mentioned this in the season review. Iowa actually does have a GM. I don't remember what his first name was, but his last name is Murray. He's been there. He wasn't the official GM right after Curver's passed. I think Guerin took over for a little bit and then inducted Murray as the general manager. So I misled y'all. I apologize on that aspect. But going back to a little bit of the article, we're also talking a actual NHL veteran for an actual NHL player that coach. He played 44. McLean, who was 44 years old, played 18 seasons across. Actually, I'm now first reading this, and I kid you not, 1,111 games.
Well, to be fair, Guerin was a former player too. He's played for like New Jersey, Pittsburgh. I mean, that's one thing I like about sports and stuff like that too, is a lot of former players understand what it's like to play and what it's like to be a part of an organization and kind of understand the inner workings, which is why a lot of times when you see a lot of former players step up and like take over these ownership roles and take over these coaching and GM roles, they understand it. So that, and like I say, with that type of experience, over 1,100 games played, again, he understands it from multiple levels, which is why I think it's a great thing, because he understands what it's like to be a player, what it's like to be a coach. He understands from different levels of things. So he can come at it from multiple different angles to appease and to basically mold the team into what he believes is fit for the Iowa Wild and what he believes that Guerin and Evason would want for the Minnesota Wild, especially for those players who are probably going to be mainstays over the next season and a half.
Yeah. Continuing on with that part of the article, 385 games in the NHL level with the Blackhawks, the Avalanche, and the Panthers. So he kept it in the Central Division. So he knows I think he knows the farm system when it comes to the Central Division. So maybe Iowa finally catches the break that the entire state has been wanting. I also want to point out that we're talking a state that only had junior hockey before 2014.
Yeah.
Like even before 2007, before when Dallas put their affiliate here in Iowa. We're looking at no, let me finish that one statement real quick before I start another one. Right after Texas repurchased the Iowa Chops and relocated them to Texas. Pop quiz, Jake. Do you know what happened with that newly purchased team?
No.
Their very first year, they won the Calder Cup.
Oh, wow. So literally the year after they moved from Iowa, they won the cup.
Yep. They won the Calder Cup their first year out of the state of Iowa. Talk about a swift kick to the
Yeah. Again, such is life as a Wild or like Minnesota sports, Iowa sports, whatever state you want to say there. I'm so used to it, it's not even funny. But regardless.
Yeah. I don't want to make this video too long because there really isn't much to talk about because, like I said, I wasn't able to get much information on Brett McLean. But honestly, I'm really excited for what this season might bring. We're going into the 11th season in Iowa Wild history. And I'm going to say this now. with Minnesota owning the team, I don't know if you knew that. Minnesota actually owns Iowa as their affiliated team. I don't see these guys going anywhere anytime soon. Especially with them constantly being in the hunt for that Calder Cup position. But you can't just constantly be the team that's in the hunt. You got to be the team that ultimately is raising that trophy in the future. Now, granted, the Calder Cup, it's not the Stanley Cup.
Right, but it's still a massive thing, you know.
It's a thing that goes on your resume for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're coming down to we got to start getting players that, even though technically the players that come to Iowa, that's all Minnesota's decision.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why, again, this decision, in my opinion, makes sense because as a guy who's coached in both Iowa and Minnesota and has played, he understands what it takes to go from the minor leagues to the main clubs, and he understands what it's like to play at multiple different levels, and he understands what it's like to be one of those guys who, I mean, let's be honest here. Iowa gets a lot of their players called up to Minnesota. I mean,
all year long.
Yeah, like Rossi, Giroux, Walker, you know, even guys like Duhaime, Dewar a couple of years ago and stuff like that too. I mean, it's a constant turnaround, which sucks if you're, you know, like rooting for Iowa in the Calder Cup, but is also a nice thing if you're a Wild fan just in general, because that means a lot of your top talent in Iowa is getting a shot with the big boys, is getting a shot at being a future captain for the Wild, a future assistant captain, a future key cog to the wheel that is a hopeful, you know, Stanley Cup to the state of hockey. I mean, let's be honest here. The ultimate goal is to get called up to from Iowa to the big leagues.
Yeah. I will say, and I don't know, I will ask this I'll probably ask this to close it out more for a joking aspect. Would you be mad if Iowa, only 11-year existence, wins the Calder Cup before Minnesota wins the Stanley Cup? Would you be mad about that? Like, let's be honest here.
Honestly, no. Because again, as an Iowa guy myself, who's grown up in the state of Iowa and stuff like that, who's seen the USHL pop up huge between like Waterloo, Des Moines, Sioux City, you know, cities like that, you know, to literally seeing Iowa getting an NA or AHL team and seeing how many NHL players get called up from Iowa and are mainstays in the NHL. No, I mean, it's nice to see that the Wild operation is a smooth sailing machine here because, again, we were ranked as the top farm system, if not one of the top farm systems over the last couple of years, a move in which Guerin, Evason, and those guys, I credit a lot of that too, rebuilding that, because I don't think we have to go back to the Fletcher days where he would literally trade everyone from Iowa to various locations and stuff like that to try to chase a Phantom Cup versus build, versus, tooling, versus doing what it takes to get the solid foundation, and then you go for the kill shot pieces. Then you go for those guys who can help elevate your roster from good to great to Stanley Cup level.
Yeah. I will say that if Minnesota misses the playoffs one year, and this is a very high possibility here, let's not ignore that. Minnesota misses the playoffs one year, and Iowa is keyed and ready to go for a Calder Cup run. I can see not like the main names like Zook, Kaprizov, those types of names. I can see maybe Jordan Greenway coming back for
Well,
to help
Greenway's
out.
no longer a Wild player, though.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Eric's next still there?
Yep.
I could see Erickson Ek coming back, maybe just to build his
Honestly,
defense.
Boldy, if the guys how I could see like getting called back from like if the Minnesota Wild are out of it, but Iowa's still in it, Duhaime, Dewar, Boldy are probably the
Yes.
three big names there that I would see, especially Boldy.
Oh yeah, I got to see him actually. I got to see him for one game in person, and that was actually the game I proposed to Andrea at.
Oh, nice.
They beat Grand Rapids 6-4 that game, and Boldy had a game, couple assists and a goal, I believe. But yeah, if Boldy comes back to Iowa for just a Calder Cup run, watch out. Just absolutely watch out. This dude knows how to play in that league. I mean, the instant he got called up to the National Hockey League, what did he do his first freaking game? Scored a freaking hat trick.
Especially against the team. Well, I don't think it was a hat trick. I know he scored at least once during that game. Ironically enough, he's from that area. If I remember it, that was the Boston game in 2021, 2022 season.
It was either that game or the fall, or like one of the games like right after. But he did score a hat trick when he first got up into the league.
Mm-hmm. And that's when, as a Minnesota fan, I was like, yeah, we have a key piece. And then he bulked up over the off season, and now he's one of the mainstays, and he now has a 7-year deal. Or
is it a 7-year one way?
That I couldn't tell you.
Cap friendly. Time to surf the cap friendly website, people.
Honestly, I would guess it's probably just a Minnesota Wild contract. But well, let's put it this way: if he hits waivers, he's gone. I'm flat out serious. If he hits waivers, he's gone.
Oh, his contract only tells me the amount. 7-year, $49 million contract.
Yep, 7x7 signed right before the season, if I remember right.
Yep.
Oh no, during the season.
Yeah, because that 7 for 7 actually starts this coming season.
Yep.
Which actually the best part is, with Minnesota season being done, the first year of that contract is now highlighted. So.
Yep.
I'm gonna see. I'm trying to find if it'll say his contract type, because if it's a 2-way contract, then that means that he is eligible to go to Iowa if Iowa needs him. So yeah, I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing anything from that. Oh well. I guess we can hope, right? Maybe.
I mean, who knows?
I mean, I don't hope that Minnesota doesn't make the playoffs. I mean, like, that's the last thing I want to do. Minnesota's constantly a playoff. I want to say playoff contender, but not a cup contender. Like, there is that level of difference here.
And like I say, and that's why, again, if we can get someone like McLean who can help get the players in Iowa and, help build them into not just a playoff contender for Minnesota, but an actual Stanley Cup contender, especially because for me, I'm just like the whole farm system in Minnesota in general. I want to wait until the buyouts are officially off the books before I really make a decision on whether or not I believe Guerin is the future and Evason's the future, because even though we have those like $13+ million buyouts that are going to be, affecting us for the next, I'd say, season or two after this one, it just that the fact that Guerin and Evason are doing what they're doing, especially Guerin, because, now we have to rely on a lot of our key young pieces to be that guy, which again is why I really like this move by Minnesota. and by
Yeah.
Iowa. Because, again, as I've stated several times in just this video alone, he has coached at the AHL. He is an assistant coach at the NHL. He has played in the NHL. He's one of those guys who's done it all, so he understands the inner workings and what it takes to play at a high level, to coach at a high level, to get your team to where it needs to ultimately go.
Yeah.
And well, sorry.
No, you're good.
No, I got some breaking NHL news that's not Minnesota, but Central related. The Preds are
Ooh.
making a change behind the bench. Andrew Brunette, according to ESPN's Kevin Weeks.
Oh, you can always trust Mr. Weeksy there. I'm sorry. For the people, I know there's a lot of people that hate Kevin Weeks out there. Me and my dad when my dad was still around, we always called him Weeksy because he was like the main state of the NHL network. So that'll be an interesting move. But looking at Ryan Suter's contract, he is going on 2 years left in that contract. So I'm assuming after those 2 years are done, and those 2 years starting with this coming season, that dead cap that we're missing goes away, I assume, right?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay, so that's that one. And then the Zach Parise contract,
I believe it's the same because they both signed for similar contracts, if I remember right.
he does not have the contract histories. Where's his current contract? Hello, Cap Friendly, you're not really helping. It doesn't have his current contract, which is really weird.
Yeah, I guess I don't know either.
Standard contract. Yeah, I don't know how much he's got left because he's only signed 1 year for the past for the past 2 seasons. His biggest contract that he signed was the one by Chuck Fletcher. And that involves some of his Minnesota Wild days. So maybe the dead cap from Zach Parise is done, but I don't really know because I'm not finding any solid information on that from Cap Friendly.
Yeah,
Need to pick up Cap Friendly. You're very reliable, but you need to slightly pick up the ball on that one because we're kind of interested as to how many years our big boys have left.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, final thoughts here before we get going. I can see Iowa constantly making the Calder Cup playoffs for the next couple of years with Brett McLean. Do you see that as well, or?
I can, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if we don't make the Calder Cup playoffs in at least, I don't know how long the contract is. I didn't say that, but typically coaching contracts are more kept privately than what people really want them to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I go farther down. It doesn't tell me. So we could be looking at another 5-year tenured coach, like how long Army was. So if we don't look at least 3 Calder Cup appearances in the next 5 years, we're in trouble. And and I hate to say this, but professional hockey in Iowa is going to probably rely on Brett McLean because we're a team that's 11 years old, only 2 Calder Cup appearances, and one of them actually technically should be 3, but you can't have 8-game losing streaks within the last month of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue that with Minnesota too, because it's like between Iowa and Minnesota, like especially, we could go on like really long losing streaks. Really, the problem is it's just so up and down. Like there's not a lot of stability. Like we could go on a 10-game winning streak followed by a 7-game losing streak. You know, like kind of what the Blues did this year, which was a lot of their undoing at the beginning of the year. You know, like teams that are more even keel, you know, teams that can win 4 or 5, only lose like 1 or 2, and then win another 4 or 5 are typically the teams that get a lot of momentum and push going into playoff series, whether it be in the AHL, NHL, USHL, ECHL, whatever league. You want to try to keep those losing streaks to a minimum.
Yeah.
And anytime you lose more than 4 or 5 games in a row, there's a lot that goes into that. And again, as a Minnesota Wild fan, I think that was a lot of our undoing going into the last 2 months of the season, like especially coming out of the All-Star break and stuff like that. That doomed us a lot more. And then we managed to get on a hot streak, and then we run out of gas going into the playoffs, which is why I kind of hope Brett McLean and those guys down there in Iowa can help at the very least get a model where you don't have to push as hard at the end. You can kind of let the guys rest and kind of let the guys go into the playoffs relatively unscathed.
Yeah. I will say I went to two of the games that Iowa had their longest losing streak of the year. One of them being their annual Pink in the Rink night. And I don't know what it was, but like you had a Chicago Wolves team that was dead to rights at the tail end of that first period. A 4-1 lead going into period 2, and then something literally just went like this. And next thing you know, 4-2, 4-3, 4-4, 5-4, start of the third, 6-4. Iowa gets one, but it was too late. 6-5 decider for Chicago. You can't. It's those types of games where it's like, and this was something that play-by-play announcer Ben Gitzelson said, the game that's going to end long losing streaks is not always a blowout win.
Bingo.
You have to win close games. Look at the one that actually did end the long losing streak. A 2-0 win. I think it was over Rockford. If I remember correctly. It would like both goaltenders stood on their heads. But Soderblom got beat. I don't even think it was Soderblom that night. It was their backup. But they got the one early, or it was either early or halfway through the first. And then no other goals until like midway through the third. And that was like,
yeah,
okay, we may actually win a game for the first time since January.
And again, that kind of also brings me to the Minnesota Wild. Ironically enough, coming out of the All-Star break when we had our slump, it was a shootout win against Dallas that got us going, and a shootout win against New Jersey that finally flipped the script around for Minnesota. And then they went on a nice winning streak to end out the year until we got towards the end when injuries just riddled us and stuff like that. And we basically ended up being third in the Central because up to that point, Minnesota was realistically looking like a team that might not even make the playoffs. And then they get a couple of key overtime shootout wins to push forward, and then they got their momentum back. Boldy went on a hot streak. Kaprizov went down, and everybody found their game enough to keep us going. And then it just, basically that's what got Minnesota into the playoffs this year. So, yeah, like you say, sometimes it takes those greasy wins to get your psyche back, to get your momentum back, to get your mojo back, and then go from there.
I'll ask this, and then we'll probably end it here. Which one do you think propels the team to win more games after long losing streaks? The overtimes or the ones that don't get there? The regulation close game wins. Which one?
It depends on who you're playing. Because at the time when Minnesota won, they were going up against a Dallas team that was still fighting for first in the Central as well, and a New Jersey team that was arguably battling battling Carolina for top of the Metropolitan, which at the time was literally a 5-horse race. Like the top, like 5 out of the top 8 teams in the East were from the Metropolitan. So, in my opinion, you take those victories any way you can get them. Overtime, shootout, regulation is probably best, but shootout, overtime, however you can get wins against a big name team like that is what really propels you forward, is what really gives you that boost to be like, we're back. We can do this. Now we can just settle and focus and play a little looser, play a little lighter, let our sticks do the talking versus trying to force the sticks to do the talking, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's basically my response is you take them how you can get them, especially if they're against top teams in whatever conference or whatever division or whatever league it is, basically.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think the next couple of years for Iowa Wild hockey is going to look really good, especially if we can keep, and this is going to be bad for Minnesota, we can keep Rossi around because he needs to develop a lot more. If we keep him around, if we can keep who was our captain this year? It wasn't Shaw. If we can keep oh god, why am I blanking on his name? Our current captain, yeah, someone will correct me in the comments. I effing know it. If we can keep Wallstead around for another year, if we can keep McIntyre around, that
apparently, goal. According to this, it's Dakota Mermis.
Mermis, thank you. If we can keep our core that we've had last year around, we can make that run. It's just we can't let every team, like, I can't say Chicago ran us over this year because, I mean, we did score a goalie goal against them. I mean, like, that's just embarrassing enough in their own building.
Just ask Vancouver how that went for them, too, against Boston.
Yeah. Wasn't that on Vancouver ice as well?
That was in Vancouver, yep.
I forgot about that one. We can't let Chicago bully us anymore. They've done that since we joined the freaking league. Milwaukee, we've beaten before in the Calder Cup playoffs. That was our first time around. We beat them in 5, dominating them on our home ice. Both of our games on home ice, I should mention. Texas, we could have easily beaten in the Calder Cup playoffs, but Rockford was the one that we overlooked, and you're looking at the one that completely overlooked them. And I'm very upset about that. We can't let those teams push us around. Now I'm leaving out 2 key ones here in Grand Rapids and Manitoba, only because Iowa was able to maintain close battles with them, especially with Grand Rapids. Manitoba did get the better of us this year, but we didn't get a chance. We only played them 4 times? I don't even know. But yeah, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up on the video. Jake, I think we'll meet up again here in about a month or 2. We're going to be doing a season preview. Right? I think we should do that. Like, why not? Yeah. Maybe who knows? We don't know what's ahead. We've still got possibly 7 games left in this year for the season. Possibly. Hoping not. Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, that again, I understand I'm just looking for a good series, honestly. As a guy who no longer really has a rooting against interest. But here, let's just quick end this video. what do you like? Who do you think is going to win the Cup Finals? I say Florida in 7, and I'll stick behind that.
Let me give reasons as to why both teams can win, and then I'll give that. How about that?
That works. Like I say, I'm
Um,
just saying too. Vegas has just as much a right that they could win it in like. It just depends on which team between Vegas and Florida can get to their game first, and who can impose their will first. Because in order for, I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think it's going to go at least 6, just because both teams are very similar. Both teams have, historic things going for them and historic things going their way. And, just who would have predicted this coming into the playoffs? Maybe Vegas I could see because they won the West, but Florida I think is like the, Cinderella team that a lot of people are going to be rooting for. But for me, I'm still going to stick by Florida in 7.
I will throw this out there for Florida's case. You have already beaten 3 of the top 5 teams in the league.
Bingo. Including the most historic regular season team of all time. The historic winning team of all time in their ice in overtime.
Also, fun fact, and this is, I don't follow NBA. Did you see what the Celtics did?
Yeah, they.
That was funny. That's funny. That's funny. Anyway,
yeah.
You've already know the type of level you can match.
Exactly.
You matched freaking Boston. Who else are you going to be able to match? Carolina? Oh, you did that. Yes, it was a grit series, but you basically swept them under the rug like they'd ever existed in the Eastern Conference Final.
Mm-hmm.
You gave Toronto false hope highly by making sure that you're the one that they wanted. And now you're going up against a team that also throw out there 111 points for Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So all the teams that the Panthers have beaten have 111 points or more. You're talking about a Panthers team that if you do not win the Stanley Cup, what was all of that then? Just pure luck? You don't, but I'm gonna take this line from you. You said this last night. Mm-hmm. You don't make this stage by accident.
Bingo. And I'll stick behind those words until the day I die. You don't make a championship game by pure accident. Yeah, sure, you might have, got like past like an upset in the first round, but at what point, because remember this too. Florida won the President's Trophy in 22.
Last season.
So this is the same team that still has a lot of key pieces on there from last year's one.
With an additional piece, too.
Matthew Tkachuk might be one of the most underrated superstars in the league.
Okay. That's for Florida. For Vegas, I am sorry. I've underestimated you a lot this season. I have. And that's literally only because I'm a Sharks fan first. I don't like you. That is fact. I don't like seeing my rivals win championships. I've already seen it twice going through my effing team. I don't want to see another one. However,
and I hear you on that one, which is why I'm kind of glad Vegas took down Dallas. Sorry there, but I say, that was a big thing for me seeing that. Like, it avenged me so much.
But Vegas does have one key that they need to possibly address. That is the likes of Adin Hill. Adin Hill was on the Sharks when they made their initial cup run, I believe. I believe he was. I can't honestly remember, but I believe he was. He did not perform well in the cup final that year either. So you're looking at a goaltender. I can take my glass off because it's like reflecting and I can't see myself. Let me see. Let me just confirm this really quick before Aiden Hill. Thank you. No, he was not. He was on two. He was in the two. He was on the. He actually wasn't even in the NHL. So never mind. I take that comment back. So you're actually looking at. You're looking at a goaltender who has never made this stage before. He doesn't know what he's getting into. And the nervousness of new goaltenders in the Stanley Cup final actually really show.
And here's the thing, though, too, real quick to cut you off here. Bob has never made the Cup final either, as far as I know, unless he was a part of the Flyers teams that were going up against, like, LA or something like that. I'm pretty sure this is Bob's first Stanley Cup final. He was just a part of a, historic upset himself in Columbus. I just can't remember if Bob was ever in the Cup final or not. I don't think he was either.
He was.
He was?
He was.
So he was part of that Florida team that, Philly team that made it to the finals.
He was a part of the Flyers team that lost to Chicago in 2010.
Oh, damn. I didn't realize Bob was around that long.
Yeah. So you're looking at a goaltender who has had a long road back to this current stage.
But was he the actual goaltender during that 2010 defeat, though? That's what I'm wondering. Or was he just the backup?
He was the starting goaltender for the opening game of the two. Oh, maybe not.
Because this could be his first real actual goaltending chance in the Cup finals.
You know what? I think you're right. Because his first official season was 2010, 2011. So right after. Well, hold on. No, I don't think he was, because he was on. He initially slated to begin his North American career with the American Hockey League's Adirondack Phantoms. So he actually wasn't on the team that lost the cup, but he did sign, I think, just prior to that.
So realistically, we have two goaltenders that have never played in the Cup finals. Stanley Cup finals, I should say. I don't know about AHL or various other Cup finals throughout their leagues and stuff like that, too. So,
yeah.
Like I say, I will say the goaltending matchup is going to be the more intriguing one because both teams have enough offensive firepower or basically correctiveness. What I call correctiveness is like whenever someone turns the puck over, they have a higher likelihood of potting it in the back of the goal versus someone who just turns it over or just dumps it or something like that, So it's going to be interesting to see.
I will give the edge to the Panthers on goaltender, though, because Bobrovsky's been in around the league since 2010.
Yeah, so I still give it to them, too, especially because Vegas has rolled through, 4 or 5 different goaltenders this year? Like, even going into the playoffs, too. It was originally Brossoit, but then Aiden Hill managed to catch fire, too, just like when Lyon started for the Panthers, and then it became Bobrovsky, like, game 4. 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah. Now, offensively, you can't really compare that because, Vegas has scored more goals than what Florida has.
But to be fair, that's also their style of play is more of an offensive, faster-paced style of play.
And then Florida's got the more defensive style, which you need that to win a championship. Honestly, just because we're going on 45 minutes, I didn't expect this video to go this long. I honestly think that I don't want to be that guy that says, well, we're going to see a sweep. I don't. But if Florida plays the way they did starting in game 5, all the way to from game 5 of round 1, all the way to now, you're looking at this cup final ending in Florida on game 4 or game 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, Vegas fans, you're gonna have that bad luck eventually. Lady Luck has been on your side for a while. I'm gonna say that now. Teams should not be this good when they first join the league. It's only happened 8 times that a team has been to 2 cup finals, and I don't even know how those other 8 teams went. So I'm giving this series to Florida. I mean, I've got to give it to Florida because they're the ones that have proved everybody wrong all playoffs wrong. All playoffs long, Trevor Talk. But now the matter of games, I don't know. I don't want to give a number on that because it could end in 4. We didn't know that the Carolina series was going to end in 4. But yeah, I think we should probably get this closed out here because we're running well past the time I was anticipating. But Jake, thanks again for hopping on here, bud. And I guess we'll have to literally just sit down, do a live stream, and literally just talk because we have a lot to talk about, especially when it comes to hockey related stuff.
Well, yeah, but like I say, too, I just figured since we're here, might as well just kind of quick give our prediction on the Cup Finals because after this, then the real juicy stuff comes. Then the real talking points become because now we're getting into free agency, the draft, potential players that you're going to see down in Iowa and hopefully someday we'll see up in Minnesota, with all these different things moving forward here. And there's not really a ton of big names in free agency. Like, this isn't one of the bigger classes. It sounds like next year is really when things could get juicy and really get interesting.
I will throw this out here and then close it out. Aiden Hill, current goaltender for Vegas, UFA after the season.
Honestly, if I'm Vegas, I'd look at potentially locking him up, especially because we don't know about Leonard. Brossoit, I don't know how injured he is. Jonathan Quick, I have no idea what his contract looks like, if he's done after this year or not or whatever. But, yeah, it's going to be intriguing because there's going to be a lot of decisions even up with Minnesota and Iowa that could, again, pull the future whatever way. So,
yeah. All right, guys.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Guys, thank you guys for checking out the video. If you guys want more Iowa Wild content, please leave that like button. I never ask you guys to hit the like button. I never do. So I'll do it once in a blue moon. But if you guys do like the content, hit that like button. Jake, I'll throw your channel down in the description this time. I completely forgot to do that last time, and I apologize. I'll make sure I do that after I get it uploaded.
Sounds good. And like I say, just real quick too, my channel, you can see a lot of like jerseys, Wild, and Vikings content is primarily what I do. I am thinking about maybe doing like a recap for the Stanley Cup games and like kind of giving my thoughts about this upcoming matchup on my channel as well. So if I do, keep an eye on all that stuff too. But again, jerseys, Wild content, and Vikings content, especially with football season coming up literally in just a couple of months.
Yeah. So actually, August is when we start seeing preseason games.
Yep. Training camp is the end of July.
Yep. There you go. All right, guys. Like I said, I'll drop a link down for Jake's channel in the description here. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's video, and we will both catch you guys. I'm hoping sometime sooner before September rolls around, but it'll probably be when we do that video, but you'll see me sometime soon. Till next time, guys, take care. Let's go Wild. See you later, guys.
Later.